Welcome ladies and gents, Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter for boxing related tweets, or of course you can subscribe to the channel. Let's Talk Boxing. We'll start off talking about the massive fight that we saw tonight. Joseph Parker put on a fantastic performance, I felt, against Derek Chisora. Had the knockdowns not occurred, the judges would have given the fight to Derek Chisora. To me, that's laughable. Without the knockdowns, I believe Joseph Parker wins the fight 8 rounds to 4. Right? In other words, Chisora won 3 or 4 rounds, and in the 8 rounds or 9 rounds that Parker won, he also knocked him down 3 times, right? So I do not see this fight as being close at all, to be honest with you. On the scorecards, it was very competitive in terms of it was a draining fight. It was competitive in that regard, but Joseph Parker was the one really putting it on Chisora. He was outlanding him for the majority of the fight as well. He was landing the more quality punches. He just always looked to have more to his game. Now, we spoke in the preview about if he puts on more weight, Plan A has to work, whereby he has to be able to hurt Chisora. He has to be able to hold center ring and show that physical strength. And a couple of people in the comment section did take exception to me saying that Joseph Parker is extraordinarily strong. I think you saw that though tonight. You know, I hope people picked up on the fact that when he was tying up Chisora, he was the one that was physically stronger. How many people can say they've done that to Chisora? Tying him up, moving him back. He has incredible natural physical strength. Now, his punching power, I've always said in the past, Joseph Parker has heavy hands, but he has problems with his punching technique. Following the first fight, I broke that down in terms of how he doesn't turn over the knuckles and stuff like that. And again, a lot of people were questioning me and saying, look, I just don't believe he's got the heavy hands. Well, again, tonight, I believe you saw those heavy hands. You saw how against a guy like Chisora, who is at times seemingly indestructible, he was able to hurt him on numerous occasions and drop him 3 times. Now, the third knockdown, I don't actually think should have been ruled a knockdown. Yes, it was a vicious uppercut, but there was a little nudge afterwards. And had it not been for the push, I don't believe that Chisora would have gone down. So as a result, it shouldn't have counted. Nonetheless, the uppercut prior to that did hurt Chisora, and it was one of numerous occasions where Chisora was hurt with that uppercut. They prepared for it brilliantly. The delivery, the technique of the uppercut was fantastic, and they really did prepare for it very, very well. And you have to give a lot of credit to Andy Lee, because you're already seeing some significant improvements in Joseph Parker. He's always had the tools. I've questioned whether he's got the killer instinct. Now, tonight there were 1 or 2 moments whereby I was questioning the killer instinct again of Joseph Parker. But a lot of that was to do with being cautious because of what Chisora was offering in return. Every time Chisora was hurt, he was going to the corner and he was waiting with the shoulder facing Parker, and he was just waiting, loading up with that right hand. And what he would seek to do, if he was genuinely hurt and tired, he would look to duck underneath that lead left hook. That was his move. He'd be there and then just go down to the side, and the left hook would whiz over his head. He would then try to spin back with a right hand, and then perhaps throw a flurry if he was a little bit fresher, and tried to really put it on Joseph Parker. And at the end of 1 round, he started screaming in his face. I think he was screaming war. Which of course is his nickname, War Chisora, and you know Chisora wants to bring that war. He's a very exciting fighter to watch, and he showed that again tonight. I do think he slowed down a little bit. We'll get to that in a moment. But with regards to Parker and Chisora going in the corner, I liked Chisora's tactic of doing that. If you go back and watch the preview to the Anthony Joshua-Alexander Usyk fight, you will see that I spoke of areas where Tony Bellew was retreating to the corners and forcing Usyk to come in. And when he was coming in, he was having success, Tony Bellew, luring him in off of that shoulder and then spinning with that right hand. And I spoke about Anthony Joshua could potentially use that as a tactic against Usyk. Don't necessarily chase him down. Get on the back foot. Let yourself be supposedly backed up into a corner and seek to counter in that way. Not necessarily because you're hurt like Chisora was tonight, but what it does when you move into that corner, it cuts off the ability to come around the guy. So you know that the entry point is slimmer. You're forcing a guy through a straight, essentially. You can't escape either, but you know the trajectory from which he's coming. Additionally to that, you do have the potential to lean off the ropes and come off and counter. In other words, there is a certain safety from being in the corner. And Chisora found that. And what Joseph Parker should have been doing is feinting to get Chisora to react. Feint as though you're going to come in. Chisora is either then going to duck, like we said he was doing, or look to counter immediately. Off of that reaction from your feint, you then go to work. The first couple of times Chisora went into the corner, Joseph Parker didn't do that. He was overly cautious. He was aware I think Chisora's playing possum here. He's seriously hurt, but I'm not really going to jump on him just yet because I think he might come back at me with something. I think that was the first time. The second time, he actually did let go of his hands, and that was when Chisora started then throwing a flurry and screaming in his face. So you could see why Parker was cautious, but he wasn't fainting. He wasn't trying to get the reaction. In other words, yes, you can be cautious, but still be aggressive. Be cautious about what's coming back, but still focus on how you're going to draw the guy out to then let go of your hands. These are little elements of a killer instinct, that finisher, so to speak, that he's going to still have to work on. There's still that element of his game lacking. Chisora was hurt on multiple occasions tonight, and on multiple occasions, he should have been gotten out of there. And it was just that moment, that last little killer instinct that he lacks, that finishing touch. But that aside, he was generally very, very good. There was, I believe, the fourth time or the third time that Chisora went into the corner where Parker did do that. He feinted as though he was going to throw a hook and then threw an uppercut. So he waited, he dropped a little shoulder feint, Chisora ducked, then he followed him with an uppercut. That was perfect. That's what you wanted. There was another time as well where the referee looked like he was going to stop the fight. He was going to step in the 9th round, and Parker at that point did jump in with a flurry of shots. And Chisora, who's a warrior, did come back with a right looping shot of his own, which I think actually missed, but he showed there was life in him still. The point is, one thing I liked about Parker is that he learned from that as the fight wore on. So although it was a pattern that I didn't like what he was doing early on in the fight and he lacked that killer instinct, he still adapted. And that's good. That's a good sign. With regards to Chisora, I don't think he brought the same sort of frenetic tempo that he usually does. Particularly early, you saw him get on the back foot. And I was wondering, is this Dell getting old overnight? Is he just not able to bring that pace anymore and he's trying to pace himself? Well, I still think that's very possible. But I did hear Dave Caldwell in the corner at one point say to him, you're starting doing that swinging rubbish again. In other words, he wanted to see him be a lot more patient. And in the changing room prior to the fight, you saw him working on a straight jab. So clearly they were looking at having him being a lot more controlled. And they were saying, listen, he's going to be explosive for a minute or so, and then he tires out. So what they were obviously looking to do is not take risks, see if they can address the flurries of fast-handed shots that Parker throws, and then try to go to work in the latter half of the round. It didn't work out like that, though. So I think a lot of it has to do with Chisora finally getting to an age and all the punishment he's received, where he really needs to think about calling it a day. Today, the punishment he received was horrendous. I can't think of many fights where Derek Chisora received more punishment than he did tonight. I know he was stopped on his feet against Tyson Fury in the 11th round in the second fight, and that was just a fight where he couldn't get close and he was eating consistent shots all night. But how many times did you see him seriously hurt as many times as you've seen him tonight? Maybe the Dillian White fight, maybe, but he was also dishing out an equal amount of punishment in that fight. In this particular fight, he was setting a tempo which was wearing Parker down at points, but he didn't really put it on Parker, did he? I mean, he hurt him on one occasion, I think, at the end of a round after he'd actually gone down, but he didn't really cause part. You were never in a situation where you thought the stoppage could come here in favor of Chisora. It was, in terms of an actual fight, not just round by round scoring, but in terms of a fight, it was quite a one-sided beatdown, to be honest with you. And if I was his trainer, to be honest with you, I know in round 9 the referee was thinking, shall I step in, shall I not? And then Chisora, being the warrior that he is, throws that winging right hand. I would have pulled him out. To me, there was no real opportunity for him to come back into the fight. He'd taken a huge amount of damage. Now, Andy Lee, who I thought overall, like I said, he's done a terrific job, right, with Derek Chisora. I actually felt he gave one piece of poor advice, I guess you could say. Or I don't want to say poor advice. I'll say advice that I at least disagree with. In the last couple of rounds, he said to Joseph Parker, I want you to turn off the shoulder, and I want you to make yourself small and turn off, throw the right uppercut followed by the left hook. So what he's telling him to do is turn off at the shoulder, make himself a smaller target, and back off. The reason I didn't like that advice is because Derek Chisora wants you to back off. The only way Derek Chisora can produce his power really is either if he's leaning back on the ropes and then he's trying to launch off of those ropes, or if he's the one coming forward and winging those big wide shots. His power is essentially in those big wide shots. Now, we saw that Joseph Parker had what seemed like a physical advantage, a strength advantage, tying up Chisora, something you don't really see too often. So there was no need for him to be forced to move backwards. So what I wanted to see from him in the last couple of rounds is for him to smother Chisora, make it a boring fight, get up close. All these little heavy-handed little shots where they're hitting each other to the body, they take their toll over the course of a 12-round fight. But you got 2 rounds to go. As long as you don't get knocked out, you win the fight. At least that's how it should be, right? The scorecards should have been wider than they were. As a result of that, you don't need to be stepping out of that clinch, because as you step out, he's swinging. And on 1 or 2 occasions in that last round where he did break from the clinch, Parker, and he was stepping out, you saw those winging shots come in from Chisora. That's where the danger was. But for the majority of it, I actually felt that Parker did his own thing in those last couple of rounds and decided that he was going to stay close and smother. Now, whether that was intentional and a conscious effort to be tactical, or whether that was just that he was so dog-tired, he was just leaning on Chisora, I can't possibly know. But from a tactical perspective, when I'm hearing Andy Lee saying that in the corner, I'm thinking, no, don't do that. Stay close. Get close to him. Smother his work. And by doing so, you may be smothering your own work, but you are taking yourself out of the potential for being knocked out. The fight is in the bag, right? Make it boring. You're not there for the fans. You don't care about the fans in that regard. They booed you on your way in. They're going to, cheer Chisora or whatever happens. He's their hero. Now, one of the ways you know it was a very one-sided fight, by the way, is because this atmosphere was superb when they were coming into the ring. You only heard 2 or 3 roars from the crowd in this entire fight, where Chisora had a bit of momentum. Other than that, check out how silent the crowd were for what was a terrific all-action affair, because they were gutted at what they were watching, right? And you don't want to give them that encouragement. And that's one good thing Andy Lee was saying a lot to Parker. He was saying to him, you don't want to give him that encouragement. Stay on him, make him work, keep doing what you're doing. He was right about the shot selection that he was talking about. The uppercut was on point throughout the fight. He wanted him to follow it up with a left hook, something that he wasn't always doing. So that sort of advice was spot on from Andy Lee. I thought he did a terrific job. Just for those last couple of rounds, I didn't like the idea of him turning off at the shoulder and backing off. I wanted him in close, and he did indeed get in close. And the added weight, he said at the end of the fight, it definitely made him feel a lot stronger. And I believe you saw the real physical strength tonight of Joseph Parker. Let me know what you think in terms of Joseph Parker going forward. There's talk of him fighting Hrgović. That would be a terrific fight if we can get Joseph Parker continually improving along the lines that he's improving, especially because Hrgović looks hittable. And if we're going to see Joseph Parker, who also has fast feet, so does Hrgović, if we see him with fast feet, able to close the range and start landing on Hrgović, listen, they've both got terrific chins. We know Parker's got a terrific chin, tried and tested. This could be a much closer and better fight than a lot of people assume. I've seen a lot of people on social media talk like Hrgović is going to walk through Joseph Parker. I wouldn't be so sure. If Parker turns up and he's willing to fight and he's got the bit between his teeth like he is tonight, and he continues to improve along with Andy Lee, listen, it's going to be a really interesting affair. With regards to Derek Chisora, listen, he's had an amazing career. He really has. And it's a shame for me that he hadn't approached his career earlier like he did in his time with David Haye and beyond in terms of fitness, the sort of shape he was in. You have to understand he's 37 now. He's been with Haye since, 35? Imagine, obviously he was not going to be with Haye, who was a rival, but imagine he'd taken that sort of fitness regimen seriously when he was 25. Right? If he was capable of this sort of engine and this sort of heart and this never say die attitude, and he was able to marry that with youth, well, then you're talking about a completely different proposition. And a lot of the defeats that he had, he may not have had. Of course, a lot of the fights he also lost were against elite level opposition. And you have to say Derek Chisora has always turned up. If he is to carry on, I want to see him have one more fight against a guy who he's capable of beating quite comfortably in front of a hometown crowd. Give him a lovely farewell. But I do not want to see this man continue to be involved in these sorts of punishing affairs. These are the sorts of fights that can take years off your life. But what a warrior. Eddie Hearn at the end of the fight said, this guy's not human. I don't think any of us can argue with that. He was tremendous tonight. Joseph Parker was tremendous in the ring, in my humble opinion, as well. In particular, the newfound punching spite, I guess you could say. And I thought it was a terrific performance. Let me know what you thought, everybody. Chat to you soon. Take care and God bless.